So I said I would get these three out and show them to you all together, and here we are. I believe these are the three different iterations of Schrade's assisted opening mechanism that they patented. I showed you guys this one earlier in the week. This is the first version that came out in 2008, the Schrade Extreme Survival OTF with a Zytel handle with a steel reinforcing liner, and the very, very kind of rough and crude concept of the assisted opener. Your lock release is right there. You've got a coil spring, coil spring right there, tension spring, that as you begin to pull the blade back, it stretches that until you get past the detent, and then you push the thumb stud forward over the detent, and then it springs open on its own. So technically an assisted opener. The second generation that they came out with, it was kind of mimicking an Ultratech in my mind, with moving the thumb stud to the spine of the blade. So it's kind of like the slider on the original Ultratech style knives. I think these came out around 2010, maybe. And then instead of having the spine-mounted safety here that you can engage to keep it from firing in your pocket, you now have this little toggle lever here, very reminiscent of a firearm safety. But you are still acting directly on this thumb stud here, which is directly mounted on the blade. And then that fires the blade open when you get past the detent. Your lock release has been moved up here to the shoulder of the front of the blade. Still a tension spring style. Pretty sure I haven't taken one of these apart actually. So you pull it back, you get to a detent right there, it snaps into place, and is then ready for you to be assisted. Maybe, if I don't bump the safety. Assisted open. Still an assisted opener. You're acting directly on the blade. You have a bias towards closure, so it can't just fall open, not a gravity knife. Still technically an assisted opener. The third generation is where it gets kind of sketchy. You have a very similar safety to the second generation. You can actuate the blade with basically a thumb stud here, and it is an assisted opener. But on this generation, they also added a second slider with a button here. Your lock release is still up here on the shoulder of the chassis there. But you can also open the knife using this slider up here. And because you are acting on a separate piece that then pulls the blade open, I think this is technically an automatic. Pretty sure if you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, because of this extra piece here, it is now being opened by a button or mechanism in the handle versus acting on the blade itself, and that's the distinction. So yeah, it's a really neat idea, but they pushed a little too hard to get it to be like an auto, and I think they accidentally built an auto. You can see if I open it, the blade is totally not actually attached to that slider. So yeah, it's still a really, really neat piece for the collection. Yeah, they're not super high quality. These are the first two generations were made by Schrade. The third generation was marketed under the Smith and Wesson brand, M&P. But these are all owned by Taylor Cutlery nowadays. Right around the time that these came out is when Taylor Cutlery acquired the Schrade brand after it went bankrupt. So in reality, these are all Taylor Cutlery designs, and yeah, Taylor Cutlery isn't known for making super high quality stuff, but these are really neat and definitely worth having in the collection if you're into autos and weird mechanisms. And like I said, they're pretty cheap. There's maybe $300 worth of knives here in my hands. I don't know how many people actually bought them and put them up to collect per se. So they may be a little difficult to track down on the secondary market, but they're definitely out there. They made a bunch of them, and they're fun. They're fun pieces. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little compare and contrast between the three different iterations of this. And hope you guys have a good Sunday, and I will catch you tomorrow.